What if everything you have deemed as impossible really was possible? What have you known and believed was possible your whole life? You just didn't know how to actualize it. Come and discover a world of infinite possibilities on Outside the Impossible with Venus Castleberg. On this show, we will share pragmatic tools to create the life and living you truly desire. And now, your host, Venus Castleberg.
Hello and welcome everyone. I am super excited to introduce today a friend of mine, Katherine McIntosh. Katherine McIntosh is a global facilitator, author, speaker, and serial entrepreneur. Trained in as an Access Consciousness certified facilitator, Katherine is a dancer, laugher, mountain biker, core power yoga junkie, adventure seeker, mom, sunshine hunter, world traveler, and born rebel. Founder of the No Judgment Diet, Katherine believes that self-awareness is one of the most undervalued commodities that will truly change the world. Wanting to support the dreamers, she rebelled against the norms and has been on a lifelong journey to open doors that have never been opened before. Katherine's target is to see 10 million people out of judgment with their bodies, businesses, and life. Way too many people on the planet are functioning from judgment instead of awareness. And Katherine knows that different future is possible when people begin to see that judgment is just a choice. It's a choice to thrive. Now is the time. And personally, years ago, I was living in Boulder, and Katherine and I were members of a WOW group, Women Owning Wealth. Was actually how we originally met. And then I remember I was leaving Boulder, and Katherine and Heather and a couple of my friends were all getting into this thing, Access Consciousness, and talking to me about the bars. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I'd already studied, 20 different modalities. I was like, yeah, I'll get to that one too. I'll just do it later. And a couple of years went by. I actually moved away from Boulder, went overseas, came back, moved to Telluride, and I ran into these friends, and Katherine being one of them, a few years later, and I was just amazed at the changes that they had gone through, and just was like, well, whatever you guys are doing, sign me up. They're like, yeah, the bars thing we talked to you about like 3 years ago. So I'm a little slower than the rest of them, but I'm happy to say that I chose it, and my whole life has changed for the greater, and I am super excited to be here talking to you today with Katherine about, well, we're going to talk about entertaining possibilities, but welcome, Katherine.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm so glad to be here.
One thing I did with this particular radio show was I named it Outside the Impossible, where everything is possible. And really my target is for people to realize that they have choice in life, and that they can choose something different. And I'd love if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, just to start the conversation today. Well, how about, when did you discover Access Consciousness?
Oh my goodness. Well, I actually discovered it. So I was living in Boulder. I was a burnt out bartender. I was studying to get my real estate license. I was teaching probably 10 hours of dance classes a week. And I was doing a whole bunch of other stuff. And I was teaching a dance class, and this woman at the end came up and said, oh my God, that was amazing. Because at the end of the class, I would have everybody lie down and would do a 5-minute, energetic something. Some people might call it meditation, but I would go around and touch people in these places on their bodies, and they'd come up to me afterwards and go, what the heck was that? And one of the women that came actually said, hey, I learned this new modality, and I would love to offer you a session. And at the time, like you, had been a seeker, searching for the answer, searching for everything. Where is my lucky pot of gold where I press this magic button and the joy I know is possible is actually a reality? And she offered to do a session, came to my house, and she ran the bars, which is, the first modality that we both have been introduced to that we know is life changing and life transforming. And I think 3 to 4 weeks later, I was actually taking her bars class. And this is what's really funny is it was Heather, myself, and 2 of our friends. And we didn't have massage tables. It wasn't set up. We laid on the floor in Heather's living room, and we ran each other's bars and learned this modality. So that's how I got introduced to Access. And, I really resisted actually a lot of the tools of Access for a long time. I was hooked on the bars, but the other stuff was like, I can't be bothered. Don't bother me. I really like the hands-on stuff, but all this talking is making me nauseous. So it wasn't until I looked 6 months back at my life and looked at how different it actually was that I went, okay, if I didn't resist all this conversation and all the joy that people are exuding when they talk about Access, what would change in my life if I didn't resist it anymore? And then it was like rocket ships and a whole lot of other stuff.
Right. And so when you looked back on your life and saw how much it had changed, what are some of the things that you saw? What did change in your life?
Oh my goodness. Well, it's funny. I've been on the verge of tears all day today, just looking at all the choices, right? And so prior to finding Access, I had probably spent 15 plus years of my life struggling with my body image and my self-esteem. And people who meet me go, you must be joking, right? I'm like, no, I actually almost committed suicide several times. I was in and out of therapy. I was in and out of treatment centers. I was in a psychology office, therapy office, once a week for 15 years of my life. And so my secret was on the outside. I looked like I had my life put together. I was married. I had a good career. I had a lot of friends. I had a lot of clients. I was always enthusiastic about life on the outside. But when I was at home by myself, this depression that I just could never get out of. It was like I knew my life could be 1,000 times greater, and something was missing. And I kept searching for that something, and I would get it for a day, or I'd taste it for a week in a retreat in Hawaii, or
Right.
I'd get it when I was hiking Machu Picchu and in a foreign country. I would have these moments, but when I was in my everyday living, it was like it was there, but I couldn't touch it. So it was like looking at something in a plastic case and you can't actually reach into the case and touch it or grab it.
Right. So would you say, let's just say, would you say that there was something in your life that you had deemed was impossible to change that you actually have seen change?
Yeah, and I think that's the tears, because, we had talked about launching something that starts next week. And I've really had to look at the change that I've created in my life. So I remember that I, without a doubt, was convinced that I would never be able to like my body, that I would never be able to love the skin that I was in, that I would never be able to be skinny enough, pretty enough, sexy enough. I just was convinced that I would probably have to die unhappy in my own skin. And it was probably a year into getting my bars run, using the tools of Access Consciousness, becoming a certified facilitator, that I woke up one day and went, holy crap, something's different. Something is really, literally, this can't be possible. I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm not unhappy. Something and actually it was this place of, instead of celebrating oh my God, this is amazing, it was wait, something's wrong with this picture. I no longer have this like sinking feeling that I'm not enough or I'm not good enough or my body's not good enough.
Hmm. Wow, that's beautiful. And so could you share maybe some tools, or how did you change that for yourself? I remember I took a class with you, it was probably 5 years ago. And you were talking to everybody about standing in front of the mirror, and for every judgment you had, well, like every area that you had a judgment, to pock and pod all the judgments until the energy shifted. But like literally stand naked in front of the mirror to yourself. And I'll be honest with you, it took me a long time to do that. I'm like, I can't do that. Like, and I don't, body images hasn't been a big thing for me, but it's also like, I also don't pay that much attention to it, which is interesting, right? So what were maybe like that tool, but maybe what were some other tools that you used to change, do you think that changed that for you?
Oh, it's such a good question. Well, and it's interesting because so my challenge that I'm starting on Monday, a week from today, is actually a 15-day, like get in front of the mirror and do these exercises we're going to talk about. So I'm going to back up before I share the exercises. Is that
Sure.
I somehow thought that everybody was born with loving their body and self-esteem, and I just missed the magic like gene, right? I somehow thought that all of these people that I was surrounding myself with like already had self-esteem, like it was natural. And it's actually not until very recently that I realized that self-esteem and confidence and building that muscle is actually an everyday choice, right? And like,
Right.
I just thought like the successful people that I always admired my whole life woke up and didn't have to work at choosing to be confident, didn't have to work at building a successful business. They just were like born with success. And so it wasn't until starting this challenge for myself, which was about 6+ years ago, that I saw that self-esteem and confidence was actually a muscle that you build, and it's a choice every day. And so one of the things that happened is I had a moment in the mirror, which I won't tell. People can certainly find that story. If they join the challenge, you can find it all online, right? It's my light bulb moment of standing in the mirror and having this aha. But what I did is I went, okay, if I've spent 15 plus 20 years of my life on diets, on exercise pills, and I was like a hardcore athlete. I had an amazing body. I just never knew it. And I didn't ever want to look at it. I didn't ever want to pay attention to it. So the easier choice was to make sure that I made myself as little and small and like bad talked myself as much as possible. And what I did is I trained myself to look in the mirror. Most of us, you ask almost anyone on the planet, when people look in the mirror, what's the first thing they do?
Judge it.
Yeah, like find the wrinkles and find the
Right.
things they want to change and pinch at their butt, or, like grab their stomach, or like suck in and see what it would be like to be thinner. Or, I was watching my 6-year-old do it yesterday and I'm going, oh my God, like seriously, this is insane. And so I started, instead of saying, oh, you're beautiful, don't worry about it, or oh, you have a great body, like I actually started asking questions. And so what I did is I'd stand in the mirror, and instead of looking at the first thing I could find to change, the wrinkles, the aging, the stomach, the butt, whatever it is for people, I started looking in the mirror and asked to find the thing that I could be grateful for. So it started with, and look, this is not easy. It sounds easy, and once you do it, it's easy. But it's like asking somebody who's maybe 100 pounds overweight, who's never exercised in their life, to start to practice to put on running shoes and go for a walk a mile a day. Right? And then you go for 2 miles, and then you go for, like, you actually have to work at it. And so I would stand in the mirror and I'd look and I'd go, okay, what can I be grateful for? So at the beginning it was like, well, I guess I could be grateful for my eyes. Like,
Right.
I guess I could be grateful for my freckles. I'm like, I guess I could be grateful for my smile. Everybody else compliments me on it. So I guess I could be grateful for that. But if you asked me to be grateful for anything from the neck down, that was like, don't you dare go there. Like, don't you dare even begin to go there. And so what I had to do is, it probably took about a week. I'd look in the mirror and be like, all right, Katherine, let's find one thing on your body you could be grateful for from the neck down. and it was like, well, your legs, they're pretty athletic. And I didn't like how they looked, but what I started to look at is those legs took you over Machu Picchu and the hardest hike you've ever done in your life, carrying a 60-pound backpack. And you did it before they had guides. You did it before you needed to like hire someone to take you back there. You cooked all the meals yourself. You actually saw the sights. You even had to wear a knee brace to get yourself through it, but you did it. And I'd be like, oh, those legs like mountain bike up mountains that most people wouldn't even hike up, right? Oh, those legs, they won the game-winning goal to get your team to win the state championship your senior year in high school. And oh, by the way, they did it with 1 minute and 30 seconds left in the game. So I started to, and like even talking about it, my body gets happier. Why? Because it's an acknowledgement of the gift of all of the things that have occurred in my life that my body's taken me through.
Wow.
And when I started to do that, then it like things really started to change for me.
Cool. Well, we're going to take a short break. If any of you have any questions for Katherine, you can call in at 202-570-7057. Otherwise, we'll see you on the other side.
The best of the holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM-FM.
OMTimes magazine is one of the leading online content providers of positivity, wellness, and personal empowerment. A philanthropic organization, their net proceeds are funneled to support worldwide charity initiatives via Humanity Healing International. Through their commitment to creating community and providing conscious content, they aspire to uplift humanity on a global scale. Connect at OMTimes.com. OMTimes, creating a more conscious lifestyle.
Grab a cup of tea or a glass of wine and tune in for Inspired Conversations with publisher Linda Joy on Tuesdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Linda creates sacred space for leading female luminaries, empowering authors, heart-centered female entrepreneurs, coaches, and healers. A soulful venue where guests openly share the fears and obstacles they've overcome, wisdom and lessons learned, and the personal journey that led them to the transformational work they do in the world. Inspired Conversations to empower you on your path to authentic, soulful living.
What is magnificent about you that you've never acknowledged? Are you ready to let your own light shine? What if you were 1,000 times more potent and powerful than you give yourself credit for? What if there was a monthly call that is designed specifically to empower you to be all you can be? Would that be fun for you? Venus Castleberg is now offering a magnificent monthly membership for only $50 a month. Mention this ad and receive 50% off. To register or for more information about the membership, events, and services, please go to www.venuscastleberg.com. Is now the time to be different?
This is the story of a very special woman. Just a few knew about her superpowers. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We're here with Katherine McIntosh talking about entertaining possibilities. And I wanted to ask you, Katherine, thank you so much. Right before the break, you just talked about, okay, so what can I be grateful for? What can I acknowledge here to change this? And, that can be applied in any area of your life. But right now we're kind of talking about like body image and how does one, like, this reality is so programmed, like that there's an appropriate way to eat, there's an appropriate way to look, there's an appropriate way to exercise. So how does one find what's true for them? And I'm guessing, but I'm not going to assume that you don't follow any sort of specific eating regime. Like when you're saying no judgment diet, the diet isn't about food. It's about no judgment in your life. And does that make, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so it's so interesting because, like what was true for me a year ago in terms of what works for eating and habits is not true for me right now. And, I think that applies to so many levels of our life. Like what may have worked for people that are listening in your relationship a year ago, now you're like having to navigate new waters in your relationship or in your marriage or with your parenting style, because as we evolve as people, the rules change, the needs change. And I find that so true with the body as well. And so what worked for me to get my body in optimum shape, or what worked for me to, prepare for a big event, or it actually doesn't work anymore in the way it used to. So it's having to develop, I guess it would be questions and ways and methods that get me to discover what's true. And I'm sure, Venus, you've had the experience, or maybe you don't. I know a lot of people I talk to and who've done stuff with me in the past, they go, oh my gosh, right? Like what I thought worked for me then and would work for me now, it doesn't. And so what I do is I go, okay, what if nothing that worked for you yesterday worked for you today? What would you choose today? And so it's about empowering people to know that their body actually is this amazing resource of information, but we forget to ask. Like, could you imagine being in a relationship with your partner and for 2 months he assumes that he knows what's best for you without ever asking you how you feel? You'd be like, I think I signed up for the wrong relationship, right? And yet for some reason when it comes to our bodies, we somehow have been entrained and taught and fed this information that just follow a protocol and it will be okay. But the body goes, wait, I'm a conscious entity that desires to create with you, and you're not asking me one flippin' question.
Right.
So I'm going to get pissed off and throw a temper tantrum until you start to include me in the equation of your life. And so it's like I've done diets where I eat perfectly and I gain 10 pounds. Right?
I remember that, actually.
Yes, actually. And it's interesting because I literally am one of those people where diets do not work well for me long term, because I actually get depressed and frustrated because I'm like, but I'm doing everything I was taught to do. I'm doing exactly what you told me, and my body's getting bigger, not smaller. And so it's when I don't follow a diet, but I actually follow my gut instincts. And there's certain things that I do, like ask myself questions or do muscle testing, which isn't necessarily an access thing. And actually, Venus, you're the one that taught me how to use my body as a pendulum. And it's actually one of the things that we do in the no judgment diet, because people get confused. I was eating all the right foods from this reality's perspective, and then when I went to muscle test it based on what you showed me, half of what I was eating every day was actually stuff my body was saying no to. Right. And I didn't know it until I got like down and dirty with everything I was doing.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that. That's great. I love to hear that people are using that tool. And a lot of people do use that tool before they really understand the difference between heavy and light. It's a way that I get people to start to ask their bodies, like, okay, so, you know, and then they're like, oh, that actually, now I can perceive what light and heavy feels like, and you don't need it, you know, as much. But sometimes it's just a great tool just to get out of your head, you know, like, okay, body, you show me. So
exactly.
That's awesome. And I mean, one of my own personal awarenesses recently was that I've been having stomach pains, and I know there's no question in this, but I totally, for probably the last couple of years, it took me a little while, I was trying to figure out what food I was eating that was causing the stomach upset, which is not a question. And it wasn't until I think probably 4 weeks ago, I was like, body, what are you trying to tell me? Like, and my body was like, oh, thank God. So it had nothing to do with food. So I think that that's also interesting, because we get things in our bodies like pains, and there's a lot of entrainment in this reality that says that, oh, your stomach's upset, that means you've eaten something your body doesn't like, or, you know, you're experiencing something in your body, you're doing something wrong, rather than going, body, what are you aware of? And the body is such an amazing awareness tool if we give it the chance to speak.
100%. You know, I always say, like, all right, body, I'm really dumb right now. Yes, I'm blonde. Like, what the heck are you trying to facilitate me on?
Mm-hmm.
And it is true. Like, I don't know if you know this. I think you might. But so Candace Pert is a psychologist, body psychologist, and she did this huge study on gut stem cells and our intuition. And she found out that we actually have, I think it's like 3 to 5 times more brain stem cells in our stomachs than we do in our brains.
Wow.
Yeah, and so it literally, like, when people say, oh my gosh, what does your gut say? Like, what's your gut intuition? How do you feel about this? We actually have more brain chemicals and more neurons firing in our bellies than we do in our brains when it comes to listening to life choices. And the first thing we do is we go, oh, let me think about it.
Right.
And the body's like, no, don't think about it, right?
Right.
Just listen to your gut. So, you know, that whole saying of listen to your gut. What does your gut say? What's your gut intuition? There's actually a science behind it, that there's more brain stem cells in your gut than in your brain, which I find, like, I'm a junkie on this kind of information. I find fascinating.
Right. And that is so great. And so what are some questions that, let's say, when something comes up with your body, what are some of the questions that you ask?
Yeah, I mean, I use the 4 main tools that were taught in Foundation, which is the second core class in Access, which is, what is this? And like, that's the first question I go to. The second question I go to after what is this is, whose is this? Right? Because really, truly, like, what I've found is, whose is this 99% of things that are going on with my body are not mine. The problem is now 7 years into this journey, it's really easy for me to ask that, and I know it's not mine, and it can change within 5 seconds, within 10 seconds. The problem is most people are trained that if you have a headache, it's your headache. If you've gained 10 pounds, it's your 10 pounds. If you have a stomach ache, it's your stomach ache, right? We're trained because, well, it's in my body, so of course it would make sense that it's mine. And actually what I might be like controversial on is I think that 85% of people's weight gain is not their weight gain. I think that, 85% of people's pains in their bodies are not their pains. And I would say maybe even more than 85%. And when I take people through, their journey, whether it's private clients or they sign up to play with me in whatever way on my online courses, they go, oh my God, I've been spending 20 years trying to solve a problem that I can't solve, but I'm convinced it's still my problem. And my point of view is if you can't solve a problem that you think is yours within 6 months to 12 months, it's not your problem. And the universe should be paying you for the 12 months you've spent in therapy or in classes or like trying to solve this problem that isn't actually, if you cannot solve it within a year, it's not your problem.
Right.
And most people go, wait, what? That doesn't make any sense. I have cancer. Of course it's my problem. I have a body ache. Of course it's my problem. I have MS. Of course it's my problem. And what I invite people to ask is what intensity of awareness, right? And this is from Gary, the founder of Access. What intensity of awareness have I been refusing to acknowledge? And, like I talk about my body problems, 15 years of self-esteem and lack of like looking in the mirror. And I didn't see a 135-pound athlete. I looked in the mirror and I saw a 195-pound like frumpy person. Literally. And I talk to women of all walks and men too. And what they see when they look in the mirror, they're not actually seeing them, they're seeing all of the judgments that they've either bought as real or have been projected onto them from their life.
Wow. So did you have an awareness of who you were trying to process for, or where that energy was coming from?
Yeah, so I can back up in just a quick part of my story. So when I was 15, my grandmother and I had the same name. We were really close growing up, and like close but not close. So she was always somebody I considered really special. And after she died, I found out all this information about her. Like that she read tarot cards and she kept it a secret. And, I was raised in a very strict Irish Catholic family where they don't believe in past lifetimes and they don't believe in ghosts and they don't believe in, spirits, and they believe in angels, but from a very different place. So on my 15th birthday at 10:30 in the morning, my grandmother actually passed away, and I knew it. I was sitting in my classroom in sophomore in high school, and the bell rang for announcements. That's why I knew it was 10:30 in the morning. And I almost passed out and turned ghost white. And my friend next to me looked at me and said, "Are you okay?" And the only words I could mutter is, "I think my grandma just died." Well, at 15, on my birthday, up until that moment, I'd never looked at my body in a negative way. I never thought about losing weight. I ate whatever I wanted whenever I wanted it. I had 6% body fat or less than 6% body fat. I almost didn't pass my lifeguard test because I couldn't float for longer than like 10 seconds. And you have to actually do like at the time you had to do like a 3-minute back float. And that was almost near impossible for me because of my muscle, right? So after my grandmother died and after my 15th birthday, it was like I became a completely different person. I started to have unexplainable pains in my body. I started to gain weight unexplainably. I started to get really depressed and hate my body. I started to not be as good of an athlete. I started to use drugs and be a really unkind person in my family. And so what I realized at that time is I had somehow been trying to heal my family and the grief, especially my mom, from losing her mom sort of suddenly. And it was that point that I realized, probably 13 years later, that I realized, oh my gosh, I did something when my grandma died, and all these pains for the last 13 years are not my pains. They were pains that I took on when my grandma died. And when I realized that at 28, I had an hour energetic session, and 65% of my symptoms went away.
Wow.
And that's when I went, okay, there's something to this information. So,
Right. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Actually, we're just about to take another short break. So if you have questions for Katherine, please feel free to call in at 202-570-7057. We love questions. Otherwise, we will be back in just a couple minutes.
The best of holistic, spiritual, and conscious world. OMTimes Radio. IOM FM.
Ascending Hearts is no ordinary dating site, but a spiritual dating site with a purpose, to link you with your soulmate. We engineer the serendipity so you can trust that you will attune with someone that has the same matching vibration as you. Ascending Hearts, the conscious dating site for the spiritually aware. Try Ascending Hearts for free. AscendingHearts.com.
I'm Kathy Williams, host of Sexy Mom Abundant Life radio show on Thursdays at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. On the show, we explore living abundantly in every area of your life. Ways to let go of limiting patterns and beliefs and to step into the flow of creativity and possibility, knowing you are supported by the universe.
Who said life had to be hard and disempower you? What if all of life really could come to you with ease and joy? What if everything you saw as a wrongness of you was actually one of your greatest strengths? What if you could wake up every morning with a newfound sense of empowerment? Join Venus Castleberg to discover a world of infinite possibilities. Every weekday morning at 8 a.m. Pacific, Morning Musings goes live on the Venus Castleberg CF Facebook page. What magic can we create every day?
Imagine being fired because of who you love. Imagine being denied medical treatment because of who you marry. Imagine being evicted because of who you are. Millions of Americans don't have to imagine this. They have to live it. Because in 31 states, it's legal to discriminate against LGBT people. Get the facts at beyondido.org. Brought to you by the Gill Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hello and welcome back. We're here with Katherine McIntosh talking about entertaining possibilities with the body. And thank you. So it's so funny. It's like now we're in the last segment and I'm like, oh, but there's so many more questions we have. It's a big subject, right? It's not like a little one-off. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to go to finishing the story, which we finished, but it's like if somebody's listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I think that I've been processing a pain or body weight or an emotional something and for over a year, for over 6 months, and I have not been able to change it. some people go, well, what's the process? And what I usually do is I invite people to look at, and I think you do the same, Venus. It's like go, okay, when did it change? When did you go from happy to not happy? What was the life event? And a lot of us, we go into our heads to try and figure it out. And it's actually like if you were to close your eyes for a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes and actually ask the body to show you the energy of when was that life event? When was that unconscious moment? And you'd be so surprised. It's usually the thing that you dismiss that's actually containing the information that can create the change.
Wow. And then could you talk? That's really great. So there's a moment that something changes and we're picking up information, and then one of the tools we know is if it's not yours, return to sender. What might be something else that somebody could do in that recognition of that's not mine?
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because if you have been working on a body ache or a headache or a stomach ache or weight gain for a year or 2 years, 3 years, who does it belong to actually isn't going to work because you already think it's yours.
Oh,
so when you ask who does it belong to and it's heavy, it's because you've bought the lie that it's yours. And so you can't change it by asking who does it belong to because you're like, well, it's heavy. Of course it's mine, right? And so what I do is it's a combination of a lot of different things, and no one way is the right way because everyone is built differently, But it's really asking like, well, when did you start this? When did it start? When did you start having problems? When did you notice it? And to walk people back so they can start to look at, at that time when my grandma died, my parents were going through a horrific divorce. And so my story was, I started doing drugs to escape the pain of my parents. But that actually wasn't what had happened. So I say to people, if you've been telling the same story of what's causing the pain or the grief or the cancer or and it hasn't changed, and every time you tell that story, it's not light. So when people are telling the story, I ask, well, is the story you're telling light? And they're like, oh my God, it's not light. Then it's like walking into the nuances of, oh my God, it's not light. Okay, so what is light about that moment, right? What is right about that moment? And I say like, okay, can we ask your body? Can we pretend to take you back to that moment in time, or walk people to a moment where they didn't have the pain? And sometimes that gives them information.
Wow, great. So,
and I can say
go
one
ahead.
more thing to it. Yeah. So the other piece that I always say, because a lot of times people say, well, who does it belong to? It's not working. And what I say, in addition to that, is if you can't stop the thought isn't yours. Right? So if you're like, I have a headache, 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 and you go to try and stop the idea that you have a headache, but it keeps looping, then if you can't stop that thought isn't yours. And so that's another way of asking who does it belong to, but from a different perspective. So like with my body image, I could never stop the underlying thought that I was fat and ugly. No matter how much therapy, no matter how many drugs I did, no matter I could never stop the thought that I was fat and ugly. And so until I went, wait a second, I've never been able to stop that thought. And then it was like a light bulb went off and I went, oh my God, it's not mine.
Wow.
So, for those people listening, it's like if there is something that you keep working on. You keep taking the therapy. You keep taking to an access class. You keep taking to a therapy session. You keep taking to a bars class or a bars session, and you can't stop that thought. No matter how many tools you've used, that thought isn't yours. And sometimes it helps people with the idea of who does it belong to.
Totally. Wow, that's great. Um, and it's just a process, right? It's like you said, there's not any one tool that works for all of it. It's like, but just taking the tools and going, okay, so ask this question, ask another question, ask another question until you get some awareness. And when you stop asking questions, then you stop gaining awareness.
Well, exactly. It's like when you stop working out, you stop being fit. Right? It's the equivalent of me saying, hey, Venus, I'm going to get in the best shape of my life. You want to know how I'm going to do it? Tomorrow is day one. And day one, I'm going to go to the gym for 2 hours, and I'm going to give it my all, and I'm going to change my body. And I'm expecting that for the next 10 years of my life, through hormone changes and life changes and age changes, I'm still going to be fit. And it's like, if I said that, you'd be like, you're on planet like XYZ. That's the most insane thing I've ever heard. And yet, for some reason, when it comes to our psychological and emotional well-being, we think that if we do the change once, that's enough and it should never come back. And what I love is like, no, if you actually want to change your life and have the best life possible, it's just like going to the gym every day, but you're going to like the emotional gym of possibility. You have to literally exercise possibility every day and be excited about it instead of being depressed that you think you have a problem.
Right.
And most people are like, but I don't want to do that. It takes too much time. The time it takes playing with your problems is insane. And we somehow think that we'd rather play with our problems than entertain possibility.
Right. Well, and, just not willing to put in the work, and think that, there's a magic pill out there. That will change it. Like, well, if I do this or I do that, it's like, no. So that's really great information. Thank you, Katherine. And I'd love for you to just kind of tell us about, I have more questions for you, but I don't want to start a new thought without having a moment to share, because you were talking about building a muscle in this 15-day challenge that's starting in just a week. And would you be willing to tell us more about that?
Of course. Well, it's really simple. It is like, okay, we're going to like emotionally train you to realize it's not a problem to play with possibility. Right? And in the sense of when we have a problem, the first thing we do is we go, oh my God, let me address the problem and then I'll focus on possibility. Right? Let me lose weight and then I'll put myself out on a dating app. Let me like have $5,000 saved in the bank and then I'll start investing my money. Right? And we all know that actually doesn't occur. Like, it's not that, we end up missing out on everything we say we're waiting for. So the Ditch the Judgements is this 15-day challenge, and I'm launching it for the first time. I'm so excited. We're offering it at this ridiculously reduced rate of only $97, right? Which is insane because people are getting over $3,000 worth of tools and modalities and 20 plus years of research and study. And I'm just really excited because it's like you wake up every day, you get a tool, a video, information, you get Facebook support, and and it's just day one of like, how do you empower yourself to know that you're your body's expert? How do you empower yourself to know that you can be your financial expert, right? And most of us make decisions that make no rational sense, and yet they turn out greater than we could ever imagine. And so the Ditch the Judgments is designed to get people to start to play with possibility and entertain that first, versus thinking they need to get rid of their problems.
Beautiful. And so how can people join that? How can they find you?
Yeah, probably the easiest way is Facebook, and find the No Judgment Diet. You can just type it in Facebook, and then on the events, I mean, I can give you the URL. It's just a little more complicated. But if you go to Facebook and just do No Judgment Diet, you can find it, and it's on the events page. If you click on events, then they'll take you straight to the challenge.
Awesome. That's great. And how would you also like to have people find you?
I have a website. I mean, everything's outdated as we change so fast. But they can just research me, KatherineMcIntosh.com. But probably Instagram and Facebook are the best ways, and the No Judgment Diet or Katherine McIntosh are ways people can find me.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Cool. So that's a great segue, actually, because that's something that I've also shifted in my own life, is in my own, working with people, is like, we're not focusing on problems and sickness and pain, but how possibilities and what else is possible, and finding more joy and ease in life that automatically tends to shift things, which is interesting. Like, you don't focus on the things. But what are some ways that people could create more with their bodies, instead of, again, looking at it as a problem or something to overcome?
Yeah, that's such a great question. I guess the thing that I look at is, like, instead of asking to lose weight, ask what's the sexiest shape you can be today? What clothes are going to make you feel alive right now? Right? Because what happens is we feel depressed, and so we go into our closet and we go, oh, I'm going to have to, like, put on my tight pants. I'm going to have to, like, deal with, and, like, reality is, especially if you're a woman, your body fluctuates 5 pounds every month. Most women, right? Some people it's 10 pounds, some people it's 1 pound, but there's a fluctuation that happens based on your hormones, based on where you live, based on if you travel, all these different things. And so I encourage people to go into their closet and go, all right, body, what outfit's going to make you feel the most alive today? And people go, wait, what? You can do that? Right? And so when I'm looking at people with the body, it's like, if you were to choose an energy for your body right now, right? I say to people, take out a notebook, and, like, if you were to choose an energy for your body right now, what would it be? So first thing I do in the morning, I don't grab my phone. I don't look at my emails. What I do is I take out my notebook. I put one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly, and I'm like, body, you're amazing. What can we create today? And then I ask, all right, body, if we were creating anything for our future, what energies would you want to be today? And it's like joy, magic, possibility. I want to, like, be interviewed, on TV. I want to blah, blah, like, I want to hike a mountain in Aspen today. So I start to play with what's the energies that give me that feeling of aliveness in my body, not when I do the activity, but right now when I'm still in bed dreaming of doing that activity, and then my body starts to come more alive. And so I encourage people to think about being the energy before they actually choose it.
Wow, that's beautiful. And what else is truly possible with bodies if you're playing in that energy first and starting your day there rather than judgment, right?
Exactly, Venus. It's like, if we didn't have a judgment of what our bodies were capable of, how quickly would our bodies actualize everything we've been asking for?
Wow. And yeah. And could you touch on, I know we only have a minute left, but I'd love if you just touch on what is a way that we can receive with the body?
Choosing to be the energy before the energy shows up. Right? And that's different for me personally. It's one hand on my heart, one hand on my belly, like pushing all the obstacles, all the problems, all the things of the day away, and just for 60 seconds being willing to be the energy that my body's asking for. Be the energy of, whatever my future is.
Wow. And that would be different for everybody. But it's an energy. It's not something you need to do. So awesome. Well, thank you so much, Katherine McIntosh. That was truly amazing. Everyone go play with your bodies, find some joy, find some greater ease, and we look forward to hearing you next time.